They still talk about Kofi in Port Harcourt's riverside bars. Some say he drowned. Others swear they saw him last year, stepping out of a black SUV, gold watch flashing in the sun. I didn't believe any of it, until I saw the pot. It was a battered old cooking pot, but the inside shimmered faintly, as if it had been dusted with sunlight. Kofi's cousin swore it was the very pot he used the night he beat Mami Wata at her own cooking. Back then, Kofi was just a 14-year-old orphan from a fishing village near the Niger Delta. His mother had died when he was 7, his father lost to the oil rigs. He was the kind of boy you'd see barefoot at the market, sniffing the smell of fried plantains he couldn't afford. People pitied him, but hunger makes pity tasting. He told me once that his life changed on a night when the tide was unusually low and the water smelled not of fish, but of smoke and pepper. That was the night he heard the river call his name. Kofi said it began with a sound like a mortar pounding yam in the distance. The village was quiet except for crickets and the soft slap of water against canoe hulls, yet the pounding kept a steady rhythm. He thought it was someone cooking late, but then he heard it, a woman's voice, low and clear, Kofi. Kofi, people in the Niger Delta know the rules. Never answer a voice from the river at night, no matter how familiar it sounds. But hunger eats rules. Kofi followed the sound down to the shoreline. The moon was high, and the river's surface looked like black glass. The smell of jollof rice, rich, smoky, spiced, floated from the water itself. He told me later he didn't walk into the river. He just stepped forward, and the next thing he knew, the water was up to his neck. No struggle, no panic. The current pulled him gently, almost kindly. He swore the riverbed felt solid under his feet, like a path made just for him. Some fishermen claim such currents mean you've entered Mami Wata's way, a passage between worlds. Kofi didn't care for the theory. All he knew was that the smell grew stronger until it was all around him, and somewhere ahead, a light was glowing gold beneath the waves. He emerged not in a palace, but in a kitchen. Long tables lined with mortar bowls, clay pots, and spice jars stretched into the darkness. Lanterns swung from unseen beams, though the light shimmered like it came from fire and water at once. At the far end stood a woman, skin smooth as river stones, hair flowing in waves that seemed to move without wind. Her wrapper was patterned with golden peppers, and around her neck hung a small calabash on a chain. Kofi knew without asking, Mami Wata. She didn't speak right away. She kept stirring a pot that steamed with the same smoky sweet smell he'd followed from shore. When she finally looked at him, her eyes were dark and wide, holding the calm of deep water. You have walked far for someone so thin, she said. Why? Kofi swallowed hard. I'm hungry, he said simply. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but something close. Hunger will teach you to walk, she said. But it will also teach you to take. Which are you here to do? Mami Wata reached for a folded cloth beside the pot. Inside was a small notebook, no bigger than Kofi's palm, bound in red leather. This is my golden jollof recipe, she said. It has fed kings and brought armies to their knees. You may have it, if you can make a pot better than mine before sunrise. Kofi almost laughed. He had cooked only a handful of times in his life, and never more than palm oil stew with scraps of fish. And if I fail, he asked. She looked at him the way the river looks at a sinking boat, calm, inevitable. Then you will stay here. Forever. She snapped her fingers, and the kitchen came alive. A fire roared in the hearth. Spices rattled in their jars. A bag of rice slid across the table toward him. Cook, she said, and remember, the river watches. Kofi stood there, unsure where to start. He didn't know how to measure anything. He didn't even know what half the spices were. But he remembered his mother's voice, taste before you decide. Cook like you mean it. Kofi ignored the clanging pans and the impatient hiss of the fire. He walked slowly, washing the rice 3 times, slicing onions carefully so their sweetness would come out in the oil. He didn't copy what Mami Wata was doing, he couldn't. Instead, he thought about the one meal that had ever made him truly happy, the jollof his mother cooked on his 7th birthday, with fish his father had caught that morning. She'd stretched the little she had into a feast. He tried to recreate that feeling, not just the taste. By the time he finished, the air smelled different. Not richer, not more powerful, just warmer, like sitting near a hearth in the rainy season. Mami Wata took a spoonful, chewed slowly, and for a brief moment, her face softened. "This," she said quietly, "is not mine." Then she pushed the red leather notebook toward him. "Take it. But remember, the river does not give without taking back." Kofi never told me what happened in the moment after, but when he woke up, he was back on the river bank, clutching the recipe to his chest. The morning after, Kofi walked into the riverside market with the notebook wrapped in an old cloth. No one noticed him at first. He was still the barefoot boy who did odd jobs for a few naira. But he went straight to the open fire where Mama Ife, the oldest cook in the market, fried plantains. He asked if he could rent a corner of her store. She laughed until she saw the look in his eyes, then agreed to let him use her fire for one day. He opened the notebook and saw that the recipe was written in Igbo, Efik, and another script he didn't recognize. But somehow, he understood every line. The smell that rose from his pot that morning was unlike anything the market had known. People who had already eaten found themselves buying plates. Fishermen who rarely touched rice paid double. Mama Ife herself sat down and took 2 helpings. By evening, he had sold every grain and made more money in a day than in his last 3 months combined. That night, sitting under the single kerosene lamp in his hut, Kofi stared at the red notebook and thought, "This is the beginning." Success came fast. Too fast. Within weeks, Kofi had a permanent store, new clothes, and a constant line of customers. People started calling it Golden Jollof, and even traders from Warri and Benin City came to taste it. But odd things began to happen. He'd wake to find the pot still warm from cooking, though he hadn't touched it. Sometimes, when stirring the rice, the steam would form shapes, a face, a hand, a flash of gold. One evening, an old fisherman stopped by, tasted the food, and set down a spoon. "This taste," the man said quietly, "is not from the land." That night, Kofi dreamed of the river. Mami Wata was sitting at the same table, but her eyes were different, sharper, amused. "You are feeding them well," she said, "but how long before they ask for more than food?" He woke with a start, sweat on his forehead. The pot was still warm. One afternoon, a man in a starched white kaftan came to the store. He arrived in a black SUV, the kind Kofi had only ever seen in movies. The man introduced himself as Chief Adewale, a businessman who owns several hotels in Lagos. "I hear you have something special," the chief said, tasting the jollof. His eyes lit up. "Come to Lagos. Cook for my hotels. I'll pay you more than this market can dream." It was tempting. Lagos meant money, connections, maybe even a restaurant of his own. But something in Kofi hesitated. He had never left the Delta. The river was his home and his bargain. Still, hunger had brought him into the water once. Ambition could take him away from it just as easily. A week later, Kofi boarded a bus to Lagos, carrying the red notebook in a small bag he never let out of his sight. Lagos was louder, faster, and hungrier than Kofi could have imagined. Chief Adewale set him up in a kitchen so big it made Mama Ife's store look like a matchbox. Orders came in all day. The city's rich loved the Golden Jollof, and within months, the hotels were booked solid with people who wanted the taste that makes you dream. The money flowed, but the shadows grew. Kofi began to notice that customers who ate too much would sometimes come back days later, looking thinner, weaker, as if they hadn't eaten in weeks. One woman said she dreamed of a beautiful lady by a river who told her to keep coming back. When Kofi heard that, his stomach went cold. He recognized the description. One night, long after the kitchen had closed, Kofi stayed behind to clean. The fire in the hearth flared up suddenly, and from the steam rising of the pot, Mami Wata's face appeared. "You are doing well," she said, her voice smooth but carrying a weight he could feel in his bones. "But you have forgotten something, the river gives, and the river takes." She reminded him that her bargain had not been only for the recipe, but for something he hadn't understood at the time. Every plate of Golden Jollof carried a piece of the river's hunger. The more he fed people, the more she fed on them. Soon, she said, "You will have to choose, keep your gold, or give me back what is mine." Then the steam collapsed, and the kitchen was silent except for the hiss of cooling coals. The first person to disappear was a man named Samson, a taxi driver who came to Kofi's stall almost daily. In Lagos, people vanish for many reasons: unpaid debts, family disputes, street crime, so no one thought much of it. But when the second and third went missing, all regulars of the Golden Jollof, the whispers began. Some said it was ritual money-making, that Kofi had fortified his food with juju. Others said Mami Wata herself was collecting payment. Kofi tried to dismiss it, but late at night, when the city was finally quiet, he'd see them in dreams, the missing customers, waist-deep in black water, staring at him with empty eyes. Behind them stood Mami Wata, smiling faintly, her golden pepper pattern wrapper glowing against the dark. She never spoke in those dreams, she didn't need to. One afternoon, an elderly man in white robes came into the hotel kitchen unannounced. He introduced himself as Baba Ikan, a traditional priest from Bedegri. "I've heard of your food," he said, "and I've heard of the shadow it carries." Kofi's chest tightened. Baba Ikan examined the red notebook without opening it. "This is not a recipe," he said quietly. "It's a contract." The priest explained that such bargains were older than the city, older than Nigeria itself. "She gave you wealth," he said, "but each grain of rice you cook belongs to her. You cannot feed without feeding her. And if you try to stop, she will come for you." He offered to perform a breaking ritual, but warned it would require returning to the river with an offering she could not refuse. "If you go," Baba Ikan said, "go prepared to leave something behind, something you cannot get back." Kofi left Lagos quietly, telling Chief Adewale he was visiting family. He carried only the notebook, a small pot, and a bundle of food, dried fish, palm oil, pepper, onions. When he reached his old village, the river smelled the same as the night he first had it call. Fishermen eyed him strangely, word of his success had reached them, and some looked at him as if they already knew the truth. That night, he went to the riverbank alone. The tide was low again, the water black and still. He placed the food on a wooden tray and pushed it into the current. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the tray stopped moving, as if caught on something unseen, and a faint light appeared below the surface. Kofi knew she was there. Mami Wata rose slowly from the water, droplets sliding off her skin like tiny beads of glass. She looked exactly the same as before, as if no time had passed at all. "You have fed me well," she said, "but now you wish to stop." Kofi's throat was dry. "People are disappearing," he said. "I didn't know this was part of it." She laughed softly. "The river always takes its share. You wanted gold, you have it. You wanted fame, you have it. But every wave that brings you fortune must carry something away." Then her tone sharpened. "If you want to end it, give me something greater than what you've taken." Kofi didn't need to ask what she meant. He knew. Baba Ikan had told him the offering could be life, memory, or talent. Life was obvious, his own or someone else's. Talent meant the recipe, and with it, everything he had built. Memory was more dangerous. To give it would mean forgetting not just the bargain, but the hunger, the rise, the lessons, forgetting himself. Standing in the cold water, Kofi weighed them. He thought of the missing customers, their empty eyes in his dreams. He thought of his mother, who had once told him, "Gold from the river can buy you anything, except peace." When Mami Wata reached out her hand, Kofi placed the red notebook in it. The moment her fingers closed, the river surged, pulling her and the book beneath. The light faded. The water was still. And for the first time in years, Kofi felt truly hungry. The next morning, Kofi woke in his old hut. The pot was gone. The red notebook was gone. He felt lighter, as if some invisible weight had been taken from his shoulders, but the stall in Lagos was no longer his. Chief Adewale had already replaced him with another cook. His name faded from the hotel menus within days. At the market, Mama Ife welcomed him back, but things were different. Without the recipe, his jollof was good, but just good. Customers ate politely, smiled, and moved on. No long lines. No feverish demand. For the first time in years, Kofi understood what it was to earn a living grain by grain. He was free, but freedom was slow, and hunger was patient. Even without the golden jollof, the whispers didn't stop. Some people believed he had hidden the recipe, waiting for the right price. Others thought the disappearances had cost him, that the river still watched him. Sometimes at night, he would see a shadow by the water, not moving, just waiting. He never stayed to find out if it was real. Baba Ikum visited once more, bringing kola nuts and palm wine. "You gave up the right thing," the priest said. "But the river is not like a market where you pay and walk away. It remembers." He warned Kofi never to take food from strangers near water, never to cook at night during a low tide, and never, under any reason, to answer his name if called from the river. Kofi began cooking differently. He used whatever he could afford, small fish from the morning catch, garden vegetables, rice bought in tiny portions. He cooked slowly, talking to customers, learning their names, listening to their troubles. His food no longer made people dream, but it filled them. The fisherman said his stall had human taste, the kind that comes from care, not magic. One evening, a young boy came to his stall with the same hungry eyes Kofi once had. Instead of sending him away, Kofi taught him to cook. "Never trust a recipe you didn't earn," he told the boy. "And never take what you don't understand, even if it smells like heaven." Years later, when Kofi was an older man with silver in his hair, he had one last dream of Mami Wata. She sat by the river, stirring her golden pot. "You could have been a king," she said. "Now you are just a cook." Kofi smiled in the dream. "Kings die. Cooks eat." She laughed softly, but her eyes were sharp. "You still belong to the river," she whispered. "One day, you will return." When he woke, the river was louder than usual, though there had been no rain. He stayed away from the banks for weeks. But he knew that, sooner or later, everyone goes back to the water. They still tell Kofi's story in the Delta, sometimes as a warning, sometimes as a joke. The younger ones say he was foolish to give up the recipe. The elders say he was lucky to escape with his soul. In truth, Kofi lived long enough to see that not all hunger is for food, and not all wealth is measured in coins. The moral, as the old women in the market put it, is simple: the river's gifts shine bright, but they are never free. Eat only what your own hands can cook, and you will never owe the water your shadow. Story by OrientedTales.